Spring is here, flowers are blooming, and bees are taking flight. What better way to acknowledge the season than a German Bienenstich bee sting cake? A 3-layer delight? Yes, that's what I'm talking about. A lightly sweetened brioche-style yeast bread topped with a honey-almond brittle baked into the top, mind you, and sandwiched with a pudding-like vanilla cream. If you like a toned-down sweet treat that's also great for breakfast or afternoon tea, this one's for you. Bienenstich, while called a cake, is more like a sweet bread. Bienen is German for bee, and Stich means either sting or custard. Thus together, Bienenstich means bee sting or bee custard if you like. Either way, it's appropriate. Some say this layered cake has been around since the 15th century when a group of bakers threw beehives at invaders and then celebrated with cake. Others say a baker was creating a new recipe using honey in the topping when it attracted bees and stung the baker, hence the name. You know, for whatever reason, we are so glad Germany's creation is this cake. Thank you, Germany, for the inspiration of my Bienenstich cake recipe. For the ingredients, you'll need milk, yeast, granulated sugar, salt, all-purpose flour, vanilla, butter, cornstarch, gelatin, heavy whipping cream, honey, and almonds. So let's start by making the brioche dough. In a small bowl, you're going to add 1½ teaspoons of yeast. Then go ahead and measure out 50 grams, which is 1/4 cup of the total sugar you're going to need for the dough. And then take out 1 tablespoon of that and add it to the yeast. A quick little whisk. And then we're going to add 125 milliliters, which is 1/2 cup of warmed milk. To warm my milk, I just put it in the microwave for 30 seconds and it's perfect. It's between that 100 and 110 degrees. It's not too hot and it's warm enough to activate the yeast. Whisk until the sugar and the yeast dissolve, and then we're going to set this aside for 10 minutes for it to activate, becoming bubbly and frothy. So for the remaining ingredients, in the bowl of a stand mixer, you can also do this by hand, but you're going to need to sift your ingredients first. So you can put this in just a large bowl if that's what you have. We're going to sift together 300 grams of all-purpose flour. I've already measured it out, and it's 2½ cups. To that, we're going to add the remaining sugar from which we took the tablespoon out to activate the yeast. And then finally, we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. If you're using salted butter, if you're using unsalted butter, increase it and make it 1/2 teaspoon. And then just sift everything together. And just to make sure that everything gets mixed well, I like to do a quick little whisk of those ingredients. Okay, with the dough hook attached to your machine or a spatula if you're using just a big bowl, go ahead and start the machine on low. And we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 2 ounces of softened butter. If your butter isn't soft, dice it first and then put it in the microwave for about 10 seconds, and that should soften it up enough. Add your yeast mixture slowly. Go ahead and allow the machine to start kneading on low. We're going to knead for 5 minutes until the dough forms a soft ball. Now, you can tell my dough is looking a little bit dry still, so I'm going to add 1 tablespoon more of milk, maybe up to 2 to 3. We just want to make sure that the dough is soft and that all the flour has been absorbed. If you find that your dough is too sticky or too wet, just add a tablespoon of flour and that'll take care of it. So whether kneading by hand or with a machine, your dough should look like this. So it's a nice, good, sturdy, firm dough. Not too sticky, not too dry. I'm going to add a little bit of oil to the top, and I like to do this with my doughs most of the time. Sometimes I don't, but I like it because it prevents the dough from creating any kind of a crusty exterior. It just keeps the dough moist. You can leave the dough in a bowl, transfer it to another bowl, it's up to you. Cover it up, and then just set it aside in a warm area. It's going to take about 1 hour to 2 hours to rise, and we want it to double in size. In the meantime, let's make our cream filling. So in a small saucepan, you're going to add 400 milliliters of milk, and that equates to 1 2/3 cup. We're going to heat on medium-high heat until the milk is boiling. So while our milk heats up, in a large bowl, we're going to add 26 grams of cornstarch, and that's about 1/4 cup. And we're going to add 80 grams of sugar, and that's 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. And just give it a quick whisk until our milk is heated. Okay, our milk is nice and boiling, so we want to take it off heat temporarily. I'm actually going to leave the stove on. You want to take 2 to 3 tablespoons of milk and add it to the cornstarch sugar mixture. I'm gonna go with 3 here. Still keep the milk off the heat. You're gonna add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Give it a good whisk. With the milk still off the heat, you're going to add the cornstarch and sugar mixture. Okay, return the milk with the now added cornstarch mixture back to the heat, and we're going to continue to whisk constantly until the milk boils again. The cornstarch should cause the milk to thicken. Notice how thick our mixture is. I just turned off the heat. Okay, let's add it back to this large bowl where we mixed the cornstarch. Okay, we're just going to let this cool for a couple of moments because it's really, really warm. We're going to add a little piece of plastic wrap just to the surface of our mixture here, because we kind of want to prevent that skin from forming, and the plastic wrap will do so. Now stick it in the refrigerator until we need it. So as our dough finishes the rise, go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and you're going to prepare the pan. You need a 9-inch round. I'm using a springform pan. You could also just use a regular cake pan. Just make sure it has some high sides on it. And you're going to need a sheet of foil if you're using springform pan, and a sheet of parchment paper cut to the size of the bottom of the pan. And then you're just going to butter it. If you are using a regular cake pan that's not springform, then you can just use overhanging edges of your parchment paper. That way you can lift up and out your cake when it's baked. When it's springform, we don't have to lift anything. We just take off the sides and leave it as is. Okay, once you've greased your pan fairly well, take out the sheet of paper that I just traced with a pencil the outline of my pan here, and then I'm putting the lead pencil down because I don't want it to be against my food. Spread your paper against the butter, the bottom of the pan, so that it sticks, and then take some more butter and then grease the top of the paper. So this will just ensure that your bread comes off fairly easily. So I've learned the hard way. Every time I've baked a springform pan, anything that's gooey on the inside of the pan leaks out of the pan and onto the oven bottom. So the way to remedy that, cover the bottom in foil. Tear off a sheet of foil that's bigger than the bottom of your pan, and then tighten up the edges around the bottom of the pan. And there you go. Now our pan is ready for the baking. Our dough has risen and has doubled in size, and this isn't a large dough. So go ahead and uncover it. You need to flour a work surface just slightly. We're not going to do any serious kneading or anything here. We just need to shape it. So just take your dough out. It comes out really easily. Okay, all we need to do here is just form it into a nice round ball. So take the round, place it in your pan, and then just push it out to where it fills up the bottom of the pan. Try to make sure that your dough is even in thickness all around. If not, you'll get some puffed up areas when it comes out of the oven. Once you've got it shaped into your pan, cover it up. You can use a towel, plastic wrap, both. And then we're going to set it in a warm area to rise. It's just going to puff up, but we only need about 30 minutes to 45. During the last 10 minutes of the rise, we're going to make the honey almond topping. So we're going to heat 2 ounces, which is 4 tablespoons of butter, in a small saucepan over medium heat, and we're going to do this just until it is melted. We're going to whisk in 50 grams, which is 1/4 cup of sugar. To that, we're going to add 70 grams of honey, which is also 1/4 cup, and 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. If you are using unsalted butter, go ahead and add 1/4 teaspoon of salt here. If not, there's enough salt in the butter that you don't need to add any additional. We're going to heat this mixture until it boils. Our honey mixture is boiling nicely, so we're going to turn the heat down. Still enough for this to continue to bubble. It just needs to be like a simmer. And we're going to cook this for about 3 to 4 minutes until the color turns golden. Right now it's more of a yellow. And we do want it darker, but it'll darken in the oven, so you don't have to worry about getting that caramel color here. Go ahead and remove your pan from the heat. Off the heat, we're going to stir in 1 cup, which is about 90 grams of almonds, and then just stir it to where it's all stirred well. Okay, and right on top of our bread, or cake as you would call it, goes. So notice it's puffed up. It hasn't doubled necessarily, but it's puffed up. Dollop them onto your cake so you have your almonds equally spread and distributed over the top of the bread. Look how beautiful that is. Now it's ready to go in the oven. And just for ease of removing its sake, I'm going to place it on a little cookie sheet. In the oven it goes for 30 to 40 minutes. until golden brown. All right, our cake is hot right out of the oven. As soon as it comes out of the oven, if you're using a spring form pan, go ahead and take a knife while the cake is still hot and run it around the edge because we want to loosen up that caramelization of those nuts and that honey and butter, because when they cool, they'll harden and they'll stick. So you just want to go ahead and loosen them up while they're still warm and soft. We're going to let this cool for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes of cooling, go ahead and run your knife one last time around the edge of this cake. That would have been on our oven floor, and that's not what we wanted. Releasing the sides. And notice how easily that comes right off. So you can let it cool for about another 10 minutes or so and then remove the bottom. Check out our beautiful looking cake. It has cooled. Notice it's nice and brown all around. We're gonna cut this horizontally so that we can fill the inside with cream. Now you wanna eyeball this and try to do this as best as you can. So you need a long serrated knife is best. Once you cut it in half, it may not be the prettiest looking thing on the inside, but actually we did pretty good cutting it. It looks like a bread, it feels like a bread. We're gonna place the bottom on a serving platter, and we're gonna make the cream, and this cream is gonna go on top of this, but we wanna make sure that the cream solidifies and gels up after we put it on the cake bottom. So we're gonna place the spring form, just the side, back onto the cake bottom. And we're gonna set this aside until we make the cream. In a small bowl, we're gonna add a half a cup, which is 125 milliliters of very cold water, just from the tap is fine. And then 2 packages, which is 2 ounces total of gelatin. Do a quick little stir here. Okay, we're gonna microwave this for 20 seconds and then stir until dissolved. Remove the milk that we had made earlier and put in the refrigerator. Take off the plastic. We're going to stir the gelatin in with the milk. Okay, we're gonna place this back in the fridge until we get the cream ready, and then we'll fold the cream into this and then top the cake. Okay, using an electric mixer or stand mixer, I placed my whisk and my bowl in the freezer for about 30 minutes to make sure they're super, super cold to help whip up our cream. To that, you're gonna add 250 milliliters, which is 1 cup of heavy cream, and we're going to whisk until we reach soft peaks. The cream is there. Okay, we're gonna carefully fold in the cream into our gelatin mixture. We don't want it to deflate if we can. Keep it from doing so. So when you're folding ingredients together, you usually want to start in the center, you turn it over, and then you do sort of a figure 8. We're not stirring because we don't want to lose the fluff that's in our cream. Once your cream has been folded in, all we have to do is top that bottom cake. This is why we have the ring around the cake, so it keeps the cream inside. Go ahead and stick it in the refrigerator to let it firm up. It'll take at least an hour is what we want so that this stays nice and gelled. Since our almond topping is so crunchy, when you cut into the cake, the cream will just ooze out from the sides. So the best way I've found to solve that problem is to go ahead and cut the top layer into the serving pieces that you want. Look at that beautiful bread cake and the layer of the almond and the toffee, so to speak. I'm gonna cut this into 8 portions. And we will place this on the cream layer just like this, already sliced, when we're ready to serve it. So when you're ready to serve the cake, all we have to do is replace the top. And we want to try to keep those pieces in the same order that we cut them. And those will be our markers for actually cutting the cake. Okay, let's remove the lid. Wow, check that out. It's beautiful. Okay, so for cutting it, we want to just follow the lines of the top piece. It makes it so much easier to cut this way. You don't have any of the cream oozing out. Look at that. It's a lot of cream in there. And that's what the inside looks like. You could put less cream if you wanted to. I think it looks really pretty and appetizing. So if you were to eat this, notice how when you start to press the top, the cream is gonna start oozing out. So just keep that in mind. Imagine having that for breakfast or like a coffee cake. in the afternoon for a snack. A lightly sweetened enriched bread dough balances out the sweet, crunchy topping and cream. It's pretty to look at and is a great pick-me-up to get through the day. Thanks for watching, subscribing, liking, and sharing my videos. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, go bake the world.